Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to be talking about Julian Assange, Wikileaks, and how Donald Trump and the Trump administration is trying to kill Julian Assange, and they are fully in support of going after him, prosecuting him and Chelsea Manning, as well as any other whistleblowers. And of course, the other side, the Democrats, while they pretend to give a shit about whistleblowers like the alleged Ukrainian whistleblower, we don't see or hear a single peep from them about the treatment of Julian Assange and the attempted extradition of him to the U.S., although he's not a U.S. citizen. And it's really disturbing. And it's important for us to cover that because I know many of you are keeping up with the Action for Assange meetings and events, and it's important for us to continue to do that. So let's go ahead and get into this. Before we do, though, I want to remind you guys to bookmark our website, theconsciousresistance.com, which is our home for all of our content. Recently rebuilt, relaunched version 2.5 of the website. You can get my documentaries, you can get my books, you can follow us on all of our alternative channels and our text list. I really recommend signing up for our text list so you can get updates directly to your phone. You can support us through our sponsors, My Brave Botanicals, and get yourself a free ounce of kratom as well as some CBD and other things. And also I want to point out, guys, we launched and kind of rebuilt this documentary page, Docs, right here, and you can see all the documentaries that I've put together over the last few years, from shorter pieces to full-length documentaries like the 5G Trojan Horse and Who Will Find What the Finders Hide. So check all those out on our Docs page. But let's get right into it. First, before we get into the WikiLeaks specific news, just a little bit of background so we can kind of understand the players that are involved in this situation. The mainstream has been reporting this last week. Donald Trump shakes up Justice Department and intelligence community with his appointment of a man who is already controversial. His name is Richard Grenell, and The Hill says Trump's appointment of Richard Grenell last week to serve as acting director of the National Intelligence of the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, came under fierce criticism from Democrats and other observers. Grenell has been serving as U.S. ambassador to Germany and regularly offers vociferous defenses of Trump and attacks his critics, but he has little intelligence experience. And this led Glenn Kirshner, a former federal prosecutor, to say he's plainly, completely incompetent to be acting DNI. That's a position that if you're going to be nominated officially, you need extensive intelligence experience. So Richard Grenell, that's the guy that Trump is trying to put into this position of Director of National Intelligence. So keep that in mind for a moment as we go forward. Then we have this. Assange fight draws in Trump's new intel chief, which is the guy we just talked about, Richard Grenell. Lawyers for the WikiLeaks founder plan to use newly obtained recordings and screenshots to argue that Assange's prosecution is political in nature. And for those who aren't aware, just this whole past week, I'm coming to you on Saturday, this entire past week in the UK, Julian Assange's extradition hearings have been going on, and he's been fighting to remain free and to not get brought to the United States and potentially face death penalty charges or at least the rest of his life in prison, and that's going on right now. So according to Politico, attorneys for Julian Assange, who is fighting a U.S. extradition request, plan to introduce evidence in the extradition hearing involving President Donald Trump's new intel chief, Richard Grenell, the guy we were just discussing here. Gareth Pierce, a lawyer representing Assange in his extradition proceedings in London, plans to argue, and did argue this week, that the process to try to extradite the client was abused from early on. Representatives for Assange's defense team say that they expect to introduce recordings and screenshots of communications of a close Grenell associate, including a secondhand claim that Grenell was acting on the president's orders. Now, before this gets too convoluted, let's think about this again. Richard Grenell, is the guy that Donald Trump is appointing to, or trying to appoint to, the Director of National Intelligence, and one of his associates called a journalist, Cassandra Fairbanks, who we're going to show in a moment, and was a while back was basically just chastising her for posting certain things on Twitter. And in this chastising of her, this associate of Richard Grenell said, "We were acting on the orders of the president." Now, what were they acting on the orders of the president to do? Of course, for those who are living under a rock and might not be aware, Julian Assange had been in the Ecuadorian embassy in the UK for years as he sought asylum from being extradited to Sweden on false rape charges. And of course, we knew that if the UK got him, they would try to hold him for the US. Well, now we know that it was, according to Richard Grenell's associate, and apparently from Grenell himself, who is now potentially going to be intelligence director as appointed by Donald Trump, that the decision to remove Julian Assange from the embassy, to bring him out it was coming from Donald Trump himself. So now at this point, there's no denying for all those QAnoners and Trump supporters who still think Trump is somehow a good. There's no denying that he was directly involved in this effort to go after Assange. So Grinnell's embroilment in Assange's extradition fight comes at an inconvenient time as Democrats and national security veterans criticize him as ill-suited and unqualified, right? At the heart of the Assange team's argument is an ABC News report from last April alleging that while serving as Trump's ambassador to Germany, Grinnell told Assange's Ecuadorian host that the U.S. government would not pursue the death penalty for Assange if Ecuador allowed British officials to enter its embassy and arrest him. So they claim they're not going to pursue the death penalty, they're just going to lock him up. But it was coming from Trump himself, according to Trump's ambassador to Germany, Grinnell. And again, this is the Richard Grinnell guy, who is now being nominated to the Director of National Intelligence and formerly served as a diplomat to Germany, that he himself told the Ecuadorian government that if they let him go, that Assange would not face the death penalty. Assange's legal team will claim that Grinnell's role was more extensive than previously known and that it corrupted the extradition process early on. The suggestion will be that the U.S. was so desperate to get Assange in its custody that American officials via Grinnell agreed in advance to take a particular sentence off the table before even allowing a trial and sentencing to play out. The Wikileaks founders' attorneys are also expected to present evidence that they believe shows Trump explicitly tasked Grinnell with making the offer, thereby politicizing the process. One of Assange's lawyers, Edward Fitzgerald, hinted at this argument in his opening statement last Monday when he said that Assange's prosecution was motivated not by genuine concerns for criminal justice, but by politics. The evidence submitted this week will include new materials submitted to Assange's legal team by political activist and journalist Cassandra Fairbanks, a defender of Assange who has worked for Russian state news site Sputnik and the Gateway Pundit. She is expected to be listed as a formal witness, and this is Richard Grinnell right here. You can see him. So again, I don't really endorse Cassandra Fairbanks or really hate against her. You know, some people love her, some people hate her. But let's just play this for a moment if we could.
Yeah, Rick. Yeah, that's classified. Yeah, Rick's role was classified. You can't do that.
ABC News already reported it. That's where I saw it.
Yeah, but not his role. You are posting things that are classified that no one knows and has not been reported.
That was reported by ABC News.
I know what was reported. I see what you're tweeting. What you're tweeting is not what was reported. Someone's going to go to jail. You need to stop this.
Yeah, Julian's in jail right now because of this.
I don't want to go to jail.
Well, I mean, I'll delete my tweet only because you're saying that you'll get in trouble.
I don't want to go to jail. Please, I'm begging you.
All right, I will delete it. I was just referring to the ABC News report.
But they look into you. They see that we speak. That's bad.
I mean, the reason.
He's taking orders from the president. Okay? So you're going to punish me because he took orders from the president?
I wasn't punishing you. I was tweeting from an ABC News report.
Okay.
Remember, I called you about it.
I'm begging you, please.
All right, I will delete the...
Okay, so just to recap again, that is Cassandra Fairbanks, the journalist, activist, and as this article from Politico points out, she has posted leaked calls that she's given to Assange's team now, and the person that was on the call was this guy, Arthur Schwartz, who is kind of a Roger Stone-esque guy. He's seen as Trump Jr.'s fixer. He goes against the media for anybody who speaks bad against the Trumps. Arthur Schwartz, right there, he is also an associate of Richard Grinnell, who again is the guy who's being appointed as Director of National Intelligence. So this is Richard Grinnell, who is being appointed by Trump. Arthur Schwartz is working with him, and he calls Cassandra Fairbanks and says, look, He calls Cassandra Fairbanks and says, look, I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to get locked up. And, this guy is acting on the orders of the president. It's just basically comes out and blatantly says, as I was saying a moment ago, that Trump was involved in this decision. Trump was involved in the decision for them to go after Julian Assange and to get him out of the embassy. It came from at least one of Trump's associates, Arthur Schwartz, via Richard Grinnell, and now Trump is awarding him by putting him as Director of National Intelligence, despite having no experience in intelligence. Imagine that. Maybe this is his reward in the same way that Trump gave Alexander Acosta, who is the guy who helped Epstein get off in Florida, his position as labor secretary. So, I mean, think about it. This is a quid pro quo in a real way, not in the bullshit way that the media wants you to pay attention to. Meanwhile, as we are in the week of the extradition hearing for Assange, there have been WikiLeaks trucks circling. This is at CPAC, right, going on right now this weekend. Free speech truck with Chelsea Manning and Assange. I'm going to post all these articles. This is from The Gray Zone. Assange trial begins. His lawyers highlight the risk of extradition with CIA spying operations extreme measures. Assange lawyers pointed to CIA surveillance by a Sheldon Adelson-backed private contractor and the Trump administration's public contempt for the defendant as evidence that the WikiLeaks founder would face grave risks if he is indeed extradited to the U.S. Mint Press News. Assange extradition hearing opens with scathing condemnation by mainstream media. And you can read all these. They're well worth reading your time, of course. The prosecution against Assange began by reading out a damning statement from 5 leading media organizations: The Guardian, The New York Times, El País, Der Spiegel, and Le Monde, all of whom had partnered with the WikiLeaks, gratefully publishing the group's revelations, but now condemn them, helping his prosecution. We deplore the decision of WikiLeaks to publish the unredacted State Department cables, which may put sources at risk. So all the mainstream outlets benefited and profited off Assange's leaks and WikiLeaks leaks, and now they're turning on him. Surprise, surprise. And then we have this statement from Andrew Wilkie, MP from Australia. Check this out and his thoughts on Assange.
That country can successfully extradite that Australian journalist to that country. If the precedent is set about Julian Assange, does that mean that the next time an Australian journalist offends China and China demands that journalist to be sent to Beijing for special treatment, does that mean the Australian government will roll over? Does it mean that if an Australian journalist says something that offends Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia wants to get their hands on that journalist, that the Australian government will roll over and agree to that extradition? Because that's what this is all about, Deputy Speaker. That's the precedent that will be set. And it is shameful that the Australian government is standing by and letting these events unfold, a shocking demonstration of our subservience to Washington and our indifference to London. It's not good enough. It's beyond time that the Australian government recognised a terrible injustice to an Australian rotting in a jail in London. It's way beyond time that the Australian government fought for its citizens and for the Prime Minister to pick up a phone to Boris Johnson, pick up the phone to Donald Trump and to say, back off, drop the extradition, let that Australian journalist come back.
And I think that was pretty powerful. I don't know much about this gentleman himself, Andrew Wilkie, but hey, he's right. Australia is subservient to D.C. and indifferent to London. Now, even this, coming from Fox News, Judge Andrew Napolitano, who himself has taken a lot of shit for speaking out against Trump and, kind of going against the party line, says that prosecution of Julian Assange violates First Amendment. This is published 2 days ago, an opinion piece from former Judge Andrew Napolitano, and I will put that in the show notes as well for you guys to read. It's very well written, of course, from somebody who knows the law. And he talks about how this is an attack on free speech. Might all this be a part of the Trump administration's efforts to chill the free speech of its press critics, to deny them breathing room? After all, it has referred to them as sick, dishonest, crazed, unpatriotic, unhinged, and totally corrupt purveyors of fake news, which is true in some sense. Yet the whole purpose of the First Amendment is to assure open, wide, robust debate about the government, free from government interference and threats. How can that debate take place in darkness and ignorance? If no law doesn't really mean no law, we are deluding ourselves, and freedom is not reality. It is merely a wished-for fantasy. And even more news related to Assange's extradition hearing yesterday. Just yesterday, during the hearings, he was held in a glass box during the extradition trial. What is the purpose of this? Not quite sure, but a magistrate court judge decided that he must remain isolated in a glass box at the back of the courtroom. Now, this is not a lie. This is the truth. This is what they're doing to Julian Assange, and here's even a courtroom drawing of that. Great court artist sketch of Julian Assange trying to address the court from inside the enclosed glass-fronted dock at Bellymarsh Magistrates Court. Pretty crazy. Like, this is insane that this is what's going on. And I just can't even believe that this is where we're at now, that this is part of a real life. Here he is. He's in the back of the room in a glass box trying to carry out his case while his lawyers fight for his life and fight for his freedom. And I don't know. it's a show trial, as people are saying. Judge dismisses concerns about Julian Assange's mental health as she refuses to allow the WikiLeaks co-founder to leave the dock and sit with his lawyers during his extradition trial. Political show trial. It's horrible, and this is a reality though of what's going on, and I hope that you guys see this, and I will post the links to these articles, these various articles, so you can catch up on it. You can share them to Judge Napolitano's thoughts, to the Mint Press News article, to the Assange Gray Zone piece, to Cassandra Fairbanks' recording here that you can listen to yourself, as well as the Politico article on the whole thing. So check it out, guys. This is important. This is what's going on. This is what's happening in the background behind the coronavirus. I've got a lot of videos I'm working on right now. For those who aren't aware, we did post on our YouTube channel a poll asking people to give us an idea of what you want me to cover next. I have a lot of videos that I'm trying to get to, including creating a very simple how-to guide on fighting 5G locally, as well as some important information about the push for mandatory vaccinations. And yes, for those who've been sharing it with me, I've seen Dana Ashley's video on coronavirus and 5G, and I will be doing a response video to it very soon where I will share all of my thoughts. Rest assured, I have things to say, and I know so many of you want to connect all the conspiracies together, so you're desperate to see that 5G and coronavirus are somehow connected, and I will be sharing my thoughts on that very soon. For now, though, please do keep sharing out the 5G Trojan Horse documentary. Please do keep sharing my books and my documentaries and all my work wherever you can. And until next time, we're going to leave it there. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.